Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you are most welcome to this edition of the Primetime Newscast. On Equinox Television, Cameroonian authorities have announced urgent measures on the kidnapping of 7 French nationals around the tourist site in Waza Park in the far north region of the country. And also in this newscast, over 20 households are without a home in Ezeka in the center region of the country after a heavy storm swept away their roofs. You're watching the Primetime Newscast on TV. Good evening to you once again, viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. As we announced earlier in the headlines, over 20 families are now without a home after a heavy wind blew off their roof in Ezeka, that is a locality in the central region of Cameroon, Yaoundé. And Anna Bila tells us in the following report that the incident has been blamed on climate change. Her report.
These people stand here stranded, contemplating over the cost of a zinc sheet. A short but violent storm hits the town of Ezeka, taking off the roof of several houses. The over 20 affected families have been spending nights and days in the open or left with no option but take refuge with neighbors.
Le vent a commencé à souffler. Après un petit temps là, j'ai commencé à sentir, à entendre le bruit.
This man explains that the storm began timidly, but before they could know it, the winds took another dimension.
Quand le toit a sauté, les enfants voulaient sortir.
When my roof went off, the children wanted to go out, but I refused because there might be damaged cables outside.
Le courant est là, en sortant comme ça, un enfant peut être atteint de.
The Ezeka market was also touched by the storm. The strong winds have been blamed on the negative effect of climate change, but some others think the wind could be mystical.
Ezeka est une ville mystique. Et donc parler d'Ezeka, chacun met les cornets sur la tête.
Meanwhile, still in the Nyong and the Kele division, an entire farmland was consumed by bushfire, led by farmers to begin the new farming season.
And now here in the economic capital, Douala reports the inhabitants of Makepe have since yesterday been without electricity around the neighborhood. They say the blackout resulted from the collapse of 2 electric poles, which up to now has not yet been replaced. They say that it is affecting their day-to-day activities as well as economic activities in the locality. They are calling on competent government authorities to do something about the situation. We surely shall be coming back to that in our subsequent newscast. And now let's talk about the abduction of some 7 nationals, French nationals, in the far north region of the country, where Head of State Paul Biya has announced urgent measures on the issue. The tourists were kidnapped yesterday in the northern part of Cameroon, some 200 meters from the border between Cameroon and Nigeria. And Cameroon's Minister of Defense, in an outing this afternoon, confirmed that the kidnapped tourists have been ferried to Maiduguri, Nigeria, and it was also announced that investigations are underway to rescue the victims. And so far, no group has claimed the responsibility of the kidnapping. And French President François Hollande had earlier told French nationals resident in the far north region of the country to remain vigilant, while the French foreign minister on his part called on its compatriot in the border zone to evacuate for security purposes. Now, talking about the presence of tourists in the far north region of the Cameroon, let's now revisit the Waza Park, created over 65 years ago in Cameroon, and it remains an influential tourist site, attracting several foreigners. And senior reporter Crystal B took interest in the Waza Park and now paints the picture of that tourist site in the following report.
This is the Waza touristic park situated in the extreme north of Cameroon. This park was created far back in 1934, but only became national park in the 60s. Covering 17,000 hectares of land, the Waza Park is the most important animal reserve in Cameroon. This is even one of the reasons that attracted the admiration of international organizations like the UNESCO. With its exceptionally rich fauna, the Waza National Park has dominated tourists who come in from the world at large to profit from its delicacies. Different species of animals like the giraffe, elephants, antelopes, lions, buffaloes, and even some rare species make up the delicacies of the Waza National Park and make the park the most visited in Cameroon. But far from these positive aspects, the Waza National Park is economically rich for Cameroon as it generates millions of CFA francs per year. It then becomes normal that care and maximum security be implemented in this attractive park.
That is, of course, the image of one of the most influential tourist sites in the country, that is in the far north region of Cameroon. Now, the case opposing Cameroon's former Prime Minister, Head of Government, Ephraim Inoni, Otele Somba, and Jean-Marie Tangana Mebara over the embezzlement of some 1.8 billion francs CFA has been adjourned to the 6th of March 2013. They presented this morning before the Special Criminal Court, and the court charged them for the signing of fake contracts between the Transport Ministry and also the Civil Aviation Company in the purchase of the failed presidential plane, and they all pleaded not guilty. We also shall be coming back to that in a subsequent newscast. Now, here in the economic capital Douala, the governor of the littoral region has expressed dissatisfaction at the content of expose and the participation of regional delegates as well as administrators at the 2013 administrative coordination meeting taking place, which just ended today in the economic capital Douala. And he equally frowned at the absence of delegates of the AES-SONEL and also the National Water Distributing Company, Cameroonese Dezo. Rani Bel Satowara tells us more in the following report.
While evaluating the 2012 administrative calendar for the littoral region, Governor Joseph Beti Asomo expressed dissatisfaction at the low turnout of regional delegates and administrative authorities. He frowned that in the wake of recent power and at times water crisis, delegates from AES-SONEL and the National Water Distributor, Cameroonese Dezo, were absent.
That we should encourage the services of Labo Genie and Mat Genie to work with the councils, to encourage motorbike riders to be in order.
Among other things, discussion at the two-day meeting centered around the reorganization of the motorbike sector in the region. The DO for Douala 5 disclosed that plans were underway for the importation of more bikes to sustain that sector. The control of the motherless and street children of St. Nicodem was also a priority in the meeting following the death of the nun who was in charge of the children. It was equally raised that househelps be affiliated to the National Social Insurance Fund as part of measures to better protect their rights.
Still in the littoral region, the Douala Air Base was host to Central Accord 13, an annual joint aerial military exercise aimed at protecting and promoting the rights of militants in the aimed at promoting working conditions between participating military forces around the world. And the exercise seeks to train and showcase the interoperability between two and more military utilizing bilateral relations. And we surely shall be telling you more on that in a subsequent newscast. Now let's talk about the victims of the Cofinest, the defunct microfinancial institution in the country, where the victims are still hoping that they are going to be refunded their hard-earned money. Rani Bel Satowara visited some of the victims here in the economic capital Douala and now tells us more in the full report.
Exactly 2 years since the closure of the microfinancial institution Cofinest, its customers are still hoping they could one day retrieve their hard-earned savings. A trader of rose plantain and plums around École Publique d'Aqua explained in tears how her 4 children were unable to go to school last year because all her savings were closed alongside the financial institution. This other customer, a newspaper vendor, disclosed behind the microphone that his savings in Cofinance were near 1 million francs CFA. He said he was hoping to start up a bigger business before he heard one morning that the bank has been closed. Just like this too, the president of an association that defends and helps customers of liquidated banks get their savings explained that many others have had their plans shattered and projects abandoned due to the liquidation of Cofinance.
The road around the Bamenda City Council was recently blocked by disgruntled taxi drivers in the chief town of the Northwest region. They went on a rampage, denouncing what they termed exploitation from the council police. The tempers fled after over 60 taxis were seized and kept at the council premises for non-acquisition of required documents. But the riders say they have all their papers and want the council police off the road.
There is disturb we. You park your motorcycle, they can't carry and go cancel. We know they stand fine for drop passenger, for carry, we know if you stand carry.
This driver explains that with the presence of the set municipal police, they can't pick or drop passengers at ease. They want the impounded vehicles to be released, but the authorities present were indifferent, as they described the angry demonstration as being perpetrated by misguided few.
Financial experts belonging to an association created to defend and help customers of liquidated banks recover their monies said the effect of the liquidation of Compagnie Financière de l'Estuaire Cofinance would not have been so immense on customers if COBAC had called for its liquidation and closure when it started facing crisis. The president of the association, Pierre Numkam, said the Central African Sub-Regional Body regulating banking activities in the sub-region COBAC called for Cofinance closure only when it was already on a deficit of over 6 billion francs CFA. In a presidential ordinance issued since 1990, the President of the Republic has said problems between liquidated banks and their customers be solved amicably before going before law courts. It is within that backdrop that the association called MERBIS organized a second press conference in Douala, this time under the theme "What Hope for Victims of the Cofinance Affair." It said all legal proceedings were being taken to ensure that customers retrieve not only their savings but also the interest it generated and other expenses.